Gals! I'm Brian.
And I'm Brad.
And this is the spoiler-free review of Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Had to do the hand thing. And, this is going to be a heavy one, potentially.
Yeah, potentially.
How would you summarize? Do you have a, one-sentence summary? About it?
I for spoiler free, I would say that it's not. I would not say that it's a spoiler to say that the actor playing T'Challa, the Black Panther, passed away between movies.
Mm-hmm.
That was large news, and they decided to not replace him this movie, as kind of a tribute to him. So this movie deals with a lot of the grief that his passing has put on people.
Yeah.
So that would be kind of my one sentence. Yeah. This movie has to deal with a lot of grief and a lot of passing. So
if you somehow haven't seen it yet, there is a mid-credit scene, no post-credit scene.
After a very powerful Rihanna song.
And my one-sentence non-spoiler review would be, it felt how I imagine the Ultimate Edition of Batman v Superman must hit for people who love that movie.
Which is funny. I was literally just watching that movie.
I'm considering rewatching it, even though I know I'm not going to like it. Anyway, but it's overly long. It's overly dramatic. It has less action than you might expect going in. And it has a third act moment that I don't want to mention because it's a spoiler for Wakanda Forever. But I'll get into that in the spoiler. And yeah, I feel like that, from how it's been described and how I mean, just personally, I've never seen Batman v Superman. That was my experience with Black Panther Wakanda Forever.
Yeah, very similar to Batman v Superman. This movie has some really high highs. It has some lower parts that they probably could have done better. But the highs really push you through this movie.
Yeah. Not to twist an old rusty knife in your back, anyone who loved Batman v Superman, but there is no Martha moment. You know, there's no moment people, I think, could debate whether that's brilliant or incredibly stupid.
Yeah.
So just so people, if other people who haven't seen it didn't like Batman v Superman like myself, I wasn't implying there was a piece of comic book trivia used for an emotional moment that some might think was not a good choice. I'm trying to be very political and not insult anybody. We've all got our opinions by now. There's no changing anyone's mind. Let's not argue about Batman v Superman.
What,
Wakanda Forever?
10 years after it's been released? 8 years after it's been released?
Oh, man. But yeah, what was your reaction when Chadwick Boseman passed away?
I was sad because he did this role. He also did Jackie Robinson in 42.
Great movie.
He struggled with his illness, I guess would probably be the nicest way to say it. Kind of by himself and privately, to the point where even the director of the first Black Panther movie, and I'm drawing a blank on who that is.
Ryan Coogler. This
one too. Yeah. Okay. Where he had mentioned that there was times where they were filming that he would have to take a break, or he would have to go into a warm-up room and kind of get back going, kind of get his blood flowing again when they were doing some of the water scenes. And Ryan Coogler thought it was really odd that, he was having to go through stuff like that and doing stuff like that. Not that he criticized him for it. He just noted it in the back of his mind that it was kind of an odd thing for an actor to do. And then after everything came out, he kind of pieced everything together that he was struggling with this disease, this illness by himself. And so it's really sad for somebody to have to go through that. I mean, I can understand why he'd want to do that. And I can understand why we'd want to tell people and get that support system around you as well. So, I mean, it's sad that anybody that has to go through any kind of difficult situation, illness, personal things by themselves is a really tough thing to go through. And to choose to do it by yourself is another thing, another strength, I guess.
Yeah, I heard recently, I think from the director, that 3 weeks before he passed, he got a call as in like Chadwick Boseman was convinced he'd beat it again because he had beat it once, and he thought he'd beat it again. But 3 weeks before that, he called him, and I forget who the actor was, but there was an actor who was filming with him after the first Black Panther, and he noted that I think I don't remember who it was, but there were like 2 or 3 women very close to Chadwick Boseman, maybe his like wife or sister. I genuinely don't remember, but they would be like massaging his feet a lot and helping him like recover, kind of get his strength and stuff. But to this actor, it didn't look like that. So when his wife asked, "How's Chadwick?" and he's like, "How's Chadwick?" and he responded, I think he got a little soft from Black Panther, and after finding out, of course, that hit different. But yeah, it sucked. I needed to just make a unedited video just talking about it, rambling, pitching whatever this movie, just to force myself to cry. I'm weird. I know I'm weird, but sometimes I need to record myself to get the emotions flowing.
But I mean, sometimes when situations like that arise, I mean, you kind of just block it out. And I mean, once I think we'll kind of get into this more in the spoiler section. But yeah, you kind of just block it out. You get busy doing something else. You bury yourself somewhere else, and you try and put that to the back of your mind. And so sometimes talking about stuff like that is good. I mean,
yeah, I think the director Ryan Coogler said that he actually considered retiring. I think he said when Chadwick passed. But what do you think about what we got? Was it?
I think that this is a really strong movie on its own right. I think with the emotional backing behind it, it kind of pushes it forward. I can understand why some people don't like certain parts of it, but I think overall, the movie in a bubble by itself, I think is a stronger entry. It's probably one of the strongest entries for the 4th phase. Yeah. But I would say that this movie stands fairly well on its own in a vacuum without Chadwick Boseman, without that entering into the equation. I think this movie is pretty strong on its own. I think that Shiri and I think her mom, and I'm trying to remember what her name is.
Angela Bassett's name was Queen Ramonda.
Angela Bassett, I think, put on very strong performances. And I think they do a good job of remembering but moving forward.
Yeah. I think we can get into what may have been unnecessary in the film, and there's one thing I've heard a lot of people say, and another thing that I think is fortunately even less necessary that not a lot of people have been talking about. But
is any of them this guy?
No. But
very, very unnecessary.
Well, what I'll say is the IMAX was gorgeous, but the first time I actually saw it was in IMAX 3D, and only because like something with my schedule that day with my daughter. We saw it in IMAX 3D, and it was actually freaking gorgeous. So I would recommend, if there's any left when you're listening to this, going to see it in IMAX 3D. It actually looks good. I did not want to see 3D. I have 20% interest in seeing Avatar 2 in 3D, only because James Cameron's such a psychopath. I'm like, he probably did it good. But
He
with the
probably
MCU,
did it good, but it's probably in like 46 frames a second or something crazy, or 60 seconds a frame.
But like
60
if he does it, I'm gonna give it a chance. But like the last time I watched an IMAX 3D movie from Marvel, it was like Age of Ultron probably, and so I didn't have faith in the 3D. I was like, this is gonna be good, and I'm just gonna have to ignore the 3D. No,
Yeah,
the 3D was actually good for me. Did you see it in 3D?
I was going to say, no, I did not see it in 3D, but I was going to echo your claims of this movie is gorgeous. It really does feel like the big mouse just, gave Ryan Coogler a blank check and said, here, write and direct this and make it good. Otherwise.
Oh yeah, they pumped in way more money than they anticipated for the first movie, and this one, I don't think there'll be any criticisms in terms of the jello physics or whatever. Like in the first one, there was that falling sequence to the Underground Railroad, and it just looked like a combination of Spider-Man 3 and X-Men 1 with Wolverine going around the spike on the Statue of Liberty, just like wonky physics, and because Ryan Coogler didn't direct that. The VFX studios were overwhelmed, and someone had more of their fingerprints on that moment than Ryan Coogler did. This movie, I think it would be fair to say, and tell me if you agree or disagree, I think this movie, Ryan Coogler had his fingerprints on everything. There's no weird, wonky CGI or just stuff to pick apart and be like, really? In this? That's what we got? Yeah. Would you agree or disagree?
I would agree. I would definitely agree. And that includes some of the scenes that are different than things we've seen in the Black Panther franchise or in the Avengers franchise. We haven't seen that much of in different locations and stuff like that. I think they did a really good job on some of those locations as well.
Yeah. I'll always be curious, of course, what we could have had. And even how the pie would have been different with the actors we still have. Like, was one character massively minimized, maximized because of this shift?
Yeah. Did they add in certain characters to push the franchise forward? But Ryan Coogler did come out and say what the movie was going to be previous to Chadwick Boseman passing.
Right.
And we'll get into that in the spoiler section. But
I was actually going to say, if you wanted, this can be the wrap up of the spoiler free section, but so anyone can cut out now. But if you want to listen to this and then go into the movie and play it off before, without needing to dive into spoilers, now's your chance. If you don't mind, Brad.
Yeah. So do you want me to tell you what it was?
Yeah, yes, please. Oh, okay. In the spoiler free, because now everyone can jump.
So it was going to take place at the same time as what it does now, but it was going to deal with T'Challa being blipped and all of the consequences of him being gone for 5 years after giving after showing Wakanda for what it really is, and then blipping for 5 years, and then the repercussions of him coming back and it not being the vision that he saw. And the reasons why he decided to do the outreach programs and stuff like that. So it's similar to what we have now, and it was going to be a very emotional movie. But obviously without him, that doesn't work. Still was going to deal with the grief and the sadness of being gone for 5 years. But obviously this now kind of changed it, and they had to go a new direction.
Yeah. Yeah, I forget who reviewed it, but they said something about they wondered if this trilogy would be like an arc of bringing T'Challa from this character in Black Panther 1 to the character who he is in the comics, which I don't have much knowledge about, but anyone who does, I think put it together what that person meant. But now this derailed that.
Yeah. I mean, and since we're in the spoiler section here, correct?
We're not in spoilers yet. We got to wrap this up, and then we'll jump into spoilers.
Okay.
That was like it's not technically a spoiler, so we're putting in the non-spoiler. It's not a spoiler for the film, but it's technically a potential spoiler, and yeah.
Okay. Well, then I'm glad that I said things the way I did.
Nice. Well, what is your rating for this?
Ooh. Why don't you go first?
I'm gonna say sad mushroom with some moments that, with some fat on it, that would be a benefit to something like Peter Jackson's King Kong, but I think it just exists there. It's not an active negative, but it's not a positive. You could take it out. Like, you know how some movies are just super bloated and you're like, oh my God, cut it out. And then some like King Kong, it's like, ooh, this doesn't need to be here, but it's helping. It's like it's water. It's good for you. Like you can have it, but you won't die if you take it away from this one meal. We didn't need the water. But it's a sad mushroom, and how could it not be? It didn't fail in any significant way, and it honored honored
Chadwick Boseman's legacy.
I didn't know how to sum him up.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what it is, and I mean, I think they do a good job in this movie. I mean, I think I left the theater initially wanting just a little bit, tiny bit more. But looking back on it, I think if they would have went any farther, any harder than they did, I think it would have overshadowed how good this movie is on its own. Mm-hmm. I'm glad that they did that. I'm glad that, they did it in such a respectful manner. But I also want to make sure that this franchise, which is a really nice, really good franchise that's been started, to continue and not be saying, I don't want anybody to go back and say, well, because of this franchise shouldn't exist anymore.
You don't want it to die on the vine.
Yeah. I didn't want to use that word, but
I was more focusing on let's eat this juicy tomato.
Yeah. I want this.
Shrivel on the vine.
Yeah, there you go. But I want this movie. I want this franchise to continue because I think it's a really good franchise. I think they've got a fantastic start. I know a lot of people adore this franchise. So I want to make sure it keeps going. I want to make sure it becomes a big part of Marvel moving forward.
Well said. What is your rating?
I'm going to echo your mushroom. I thought about ayahuasca, but then I decided not to. There are some things that we need to kind of edit from this movie that are kind of unnecessary. Some bloat. Without getting too spoilery, I think there's some people that got too much screen time, and I think there are other characters that probably should have gotten a little bit more. And there's a couple loose ends at the end of this movie that aren't really wrapped up the way they should have been. They're very ambitious on the number of things they were trying to do.
Yeah, honestly, like, remember when The Force Awakens came out and like Luke Skywalker showed up right at the end, didn't say anything, and then credits? Really weird that they did that with Namor. Really weird. Whole movie. Really weird. Just that really strange. And then the mid-credit scene was just an ad of all the things we've seen Namor do in the trailers. Really weird. Really brave choice. That's a total lie. But this movie may be a sad mushroom, but I'm just going to type mushroom for me in the title.
And this movie may have been a mushroom for me.
But either way, but truly, this movie is dope. Because movies are
dope.